So, welcome everyone to the doHow chat every Sunday, the one which I do for promoting and what should I say, getting everyone more acquainted of excellence using based on the wisdom of one of my guests. And today we have a very interesting person, a very accomplished person. So let me talk about that in a while. Before that, a very brief presentation of what this chat is all about, and then I would get on to the topic. Uh, Basically, the idea was to basically talk about excellence topics. Like I said, this is a chat on every Sunday at 11 o'clock. And to join the chat, you can use that link, dinakarmurthy.com/Sunday chat. Otherwise, you can watch it on YouTube and also listen on Spotify. So, with this brief introduction, I want to just start with a disclaimer to share that look, we are basically having professionals with a lot of wisdom and accomplishment in their careers who share some ideas and approaches which could generate insights. And these insights, it's important that you consult your trusted professionals before you implement them to make sure that the implementation is effective and you get the benefit out of these insights. That's the first introductory disclaimer. And after that, that on the topics, it could be on anything: performance, execution, management, leadership, development, etc., etc. Anything to do with excellence. And today we are going to be talking about driving excellence in large organizations. And our guest, or my guest, is Venkat, the way I know him. Otherwise, Venkateshwar Akella, a very accomplished professional. And he has been somebody who has been in the space of excellence for a long time. And he's a graduate in electrical engineering with postgraduate diplomas in HR and marketing and business ethics. Very interesting. Because of his career which he chose, he was a IRAS, what should I say, graduate, or a person who did IRAS, which is Railway Service, I think, or a revenue service.
Railway. It's Indian Railway Account Service then.
Indian Railway Account Service. And after that, has had about 4.5 decades of professional experience in various areas: financial management, board level governance, etc. He is possibly one of the very few people who have worked in government, public sector, as well as in private sector, all large companies. And has also had quite a few accolades, like the Best CFO 2001, featuring in the list of the Best CFO 2001 when he was in his corporate role. And apart from that, he's also the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award of Railway Staff College, where he did his IRAS. Otherwise, he has also worked in private sector like Tata Projects, which I said. And there he did various roles, including driving excellence. That has been his core, in terms of the background. With all this, I think I would be very small to be introducing such a distinguished guest. With these few words, I would really ask Venkat to directly talk about his background and start sharing his wisdom on excellence. And before that, Venkat, a very brief introduction would really do well for the others listening from your mouth. Please go on, Venkat. Over to you.
Thank you, Dinakar, for having me on your chat show. It's very nice and nice to connect back with you, because we have been often on talking, but not in such a structured manner. And it comes at a very nice time when actually I'm doing my second innings, as they call it, after retirement. And this sort of recollection of the times we were had as assessors of various companies for various models. This really helps in recalling what exactly is the need of the hour, and it couldn't come at a better time. Thank you for that. I don't know whether I deserve to be introduced once again after all that you have said, but just 2-3 things I thought we must keep in mind, and this is for the people who are looking forward to careers right now after their graduation and maybe their first jobs, is that this distinction between what I believe in the past was a very clear distinction, that is the private sector and the government sector. I think now this is slowly becoming a myth. There is nothing really where you think that organizations in the private sector or maybe government organizations, they function with certain excellence models or certain excellence attributes, and which is why maybe one cannot be replicated with the other. But then, if you notice in the recent past, the government itself has been inducting, at the joint secretary level, which is a very fairly senior level, they've been inducting people into the government sector from the private sector, which I think is a good thing, so that sharing best practices is the order of the day, and that's what we should do: break the barriers of siloing all these good practices across various sectors. Yes, if that was to form part of my introduction, which you did, I'm very happy, because
Super.
I think it really helps. It really helps in trying to see or understand, somebody who has been there on both the sides, and I will not, reserve words for what I believe has been great opportunities. Not everybody get it. Like if you have a government class one job and you have risen to the level of a joint additional secretary to Government of India, maybe in those days, I'm talking about the early 2000s, maybe it was difficult to move out and look at look at a private sector. But then I would like to here confess that if it were not for the Tata invitation, maybe I wouldn't have thought of it as, interestedly as this. Because, amongst the private sector companies, and I'm not here holding anything for Tatas, but then it is so obvious now. We have seen it. They walk the talk, and so this Tata culture, the value systems they have, I think that is what was really fast tracked my movement away from the government, though there were opportunities to more important positions there. So these two things, I think, both the private sector and the government sector experiences have made me what I am, and I'm glad that whatever little contribution I made has been recognized in both the fields, and yeah, that's what keep me going. And business excellence, and apart from the ethical part of business excellence, which I believe is very important for a country like India, I think these two things will really help the future generations understand, because India is a different animal. If I were to use a better word, it's a lovely bird. It has to be nurtured. The wings have to be taken care of. Otherwise, it will fly off in all directions. We need to be very, very careful treating Indians and Indian economy and the Indian startups and the Indian, the big government-funded organizations vis-a-vis, the other countries where things are slightly different. So having said that, yeah, so let's see what you have planned. If you could roll out, then we
Yeah,
will.
sure. On the lighter side, before I start any question, many say, and I also feel that Tatas also are like a government company, so the transition may not have been that difficult, right?
We'll come to
Because of the
that.
bureaucracy and all
Yeah,
that.
surely.
Yeah.
Surely. We'll come to that. Yeah.
So let us start with your understanding of excellence without really getting into any depth. What comes to your mind when somebody talks about excellence?
Yeah, I'll qualify that a little, because we're talking in the context of companies and large organizations which obviously have business interests, while the government companies have interests in taking care of, interestingly, the stakeholders which are there, supposed to be there, stakeholders, especially the society and the public for which the government creates organizations and runs them. Strangely, that particular stakeholder called the society is not as evident in the interests of the organization. So when the vision and mission statements we develop for many public sectors, we do keep this in mind. We do keep the society in mind. But then it is the big brother, typically the government, whether it's the state or the government of India. So these two are the ones which have to have controlling stake, and they have a look at most of this, as different from the private sector, where you really have equity investors, you have promoters, and then you have a whole lot of others who have put money into the business cycle, whether it is the vendor database or the customer database or a customer group or whoever they are. So I think if these people also are brought on the same uh, wavelength in government organizations as they are in the private sector, I think then it will be great. And driving business then becomes easier. Driving business excellence becomes easier. Because I think till now, till recently, um, to use a cliche, the government budgets, the investments, all these were more towards output parameters. They were based on output measurement. But I think we have to move away from that and we have to start looking at outcomes rather than outputs. And that is where I think the government has been doing a bit. The private sector has realized that because their outcomes are very focused. They clearly have very good ideas about what the outcome should be. And fortunately, many private sector companies, including the Tata Group and many other leading groups, have adopted models which you would recall were there in the early 80s, late 80s. First, it started in the US and then later on in Europe. And you and I have been assessors of those models, both the Malcolm Baldrige model and also the
EFQM model.
EFQM model. Now, it is not rocket science. It's just that they were ahead of us and they were able to understand what were the requirements. I won't go into, a little bit of work I've done studying our epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, where there are parallels of all the other, models which are now being talked about as, the only, including the Deming model. So all these things are models by which you can base your you have to measure, you have to track you can't say I'm better than yesterday without giving metrics and a measurement and a unit of measurement and so on and so forth. How much ever you want to be artistic about business excellence, you have to be a scientist and also an engineer to measure what exactly is the excellence you're improving on. So the business models which are being presently tried out in for measuring business excellence, I think they are slowly creeping into the government too. Private sector has seen it, most of them. And while we need to have a model for startups, though CIA does say that they have a model for startups, I don't think the startups or the MSMEs really have been addressed, have been understood the way they should be. It is there, and I'm sure very soon, we'll be able to address that particular sector also. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of business is not only making profits. Unfortunately, everybody looks at the P&L and then they look at the balance sheet and say, "Oh, your business seems to be doing well," and then you find that the numbers are not adding up, or it's a one-man show, or it is a group which is in a line which is doing well today. We don't know the sustainability of that product. So yes, they're happening, and it's happening in fits and starts. But if you were to look at large organizations, and that is where I think we need to focus on and learn from them, whether it's a startup in the software sector or some other sector, I think large organizations should, as they have rightly, look at models which will not only help in measuring the performance in a very there's no accurate model to measure performance because each sector has got its own metrics of performance. I can't, for instance, expect a hospital to be compared with an educational institution, but that is what Malcolm Baldrige model has done and proved successful. So irrespective of the sector, and I think this is where the variety, the diversity in Indian companies we must learn. We must adopt a model and take out the best aspects of the comparison of the performance. And the next part is, I think we must have a model which will measure the sustainability of that business. There have been so many startups which do very well in the first 10 years. They issue an IPO, people subscribe, and then we find promoters just running away. They just sell their stake and go away and leave it to the other group. I mean, that is not what the Tatas have taught us. That is not what even the present Reliance Group is teaching us. There are so many others we can name: the Godreges, and then the Mahindras, and then the Kirloskar. They started off as very good family-owned businesses, but they have involved all stakeholders to ensure that the sustainability of the business is not just for making money, not just for making profits, not just for improving your scaling up the valuation of your company and then going away, which is a trend partly noticeable in the software group. I can say this with a whole lot of confidence because I know software has been the blue chip sector for countries around the globe. But if we were to look at business excellence, then I think the first thing and very foremost thing is I think we should have good leaders with vision.
Purpose.
Purpose. So you must have a purpose. The leader should understand the purpose. He should be able to stand by his stakeholders through thick and thin.
Yeah. Venkat, multiple thoughts come to my mind. First, you spoke about stakeholders. So I'm sure excellence is all about creating significant value, which is continually improving for all the stakeholders. And you spoke about government many a times ignoring the most important stakeholders and working for a different stakeholder. Say, whereas in the private, they having balanced all the stakeholders. Now, if you look at the entire thing, it's all about continually delivering consistent value to all your stakeholders, making your stakeholders and your circle who are around you happy and adding value to them. And this, you also mentioned very shortly, is some kind of an essence in both Mahabharata and Ramayana. So my question to you is, see, having come from this kind of a background where we have those in our roots, and all of us have heard these stories, irrespective of the religion, they would have heard of Mahabharata and Ramayana, where there is a lot of wisdom to be gained, and many of us have ingrained that wisdom within ourselves. Despite that, why do you think in Indian companies we need a model from a Western perspective to drive excellence? Why is it required? Excellence is simple. Yeah.
I think I think the answer lies if you just look at the last 3 centuries of our existence as a country. While after the Britishers came, I think we've forgotten the glory that was India. And if the Britishers are our only source of Western thought, I'm not surprised. That is because the colonization effect clearly had an agenda that here is a group where the raw material in the country is so useful to us, a group which is so meek, a group which can be divided, a group which we can rule over. And unfortunately, whether you call it lack of technology or lack of continuity or whatever, we did not have enough of documentation, at least that is what we are told, to talk about the glories of the past. And if these two epics stand out, it is only because they have stood the test of time. I'm sure there are 1,000 other things, and slowly these are emerging. Our Puranas, our Bhagavatam, and all these things will come up slowly. They will in course of time. It will be painful because the interpretations will be challenged. But the fact that such a interpretation is also possible, and they are so close to what our sages in the West have told us. I mean, this is not to belittle the excellent work done by a lot of Western philosophers, Western management scientists. They've all put in their wisdom, but for them, they did not have the hindsight of Mahabharata or Ramayana. Let us admit that they did real good original work. The tragedy is that we, as a country, as a civilization, it is like a rebirth for us. We suddenly realized that we have something like this, but then when we found the Westerners showing us a mirror, we found that these things are there. And I'm sure this has got no religious or even social background to it. It is just that we had these at one point in time. And you and I, our generations are last hardly for about 40 years, we live for about now maybe 60, 70, 80, 100 years. And every time you have to reinvent the wheel, and that is how things are. Fortunately, if something has happened really wonderful in the last 2, 3 decades, it's technology. And I'm glad if this YouTube is heard, this YouTube of yours recording is heard 50 years down the line, it would have served its purpose, because that is the ability for us now to store information, data, and so on and so forth.
Mhm. Yeah, super. Now, in terms of the leadership, you said leaders with a clear purpose, with commitment, is the key for excellence.
Yeah.
Now, how would you see that in the case of a government versus a public sector versus a private? Because the bargaining power and the personal contribution of the leader in all these three organizations may not have the same scope
Very,
and
very,
magnitude.
very good question, because that is what has been the challenge during my tenures in that period in each of the organizations. Um, I think the clear difference is the very basis of recruitment, and then the implementation of the rules of business in these two organizations. Um, when you get recruited in the government, at whichever level, I mean, at a section officer level, that is typically a supervisor level, or even through today, the Babudam is only recognized by the UPSC rankings. And there are about maybe 40 services, 25 services in Group A and Group B, the apex of which is the IAS at the state level and at the central government level. This is the recruitment. And here, I think once you are in that list and you have earned your job, that's the end of it. Nobody can remove you for whatever. You have to make a case for your removal by either misconduct or misbehavior or whatever you call it, or getting into some trouble yourself. It's very difficult for the president of India to remove you. He appoints you. So because he is the one who can remove you, um, uh, and the rules which have not been, we need administrative reforms. We do a lot of tinkering. I think we had 4 or 5 administrative reform commissions, but these things don't really bite enough, and they are not, in my opinion, purely my opinion, they are not keeping pace with the times. They are not the need of the hour. We have to keep changing with it, because managing government organizations, the type of stakes we have let go, we believe as descendants of the erstwhile British Raj, the license Raj or the Raj. These people who are so-called bureaucrats, they start invoking powers which they do not have. They believe it is their birthright, and that is where I think it requires a lot of introspection, and a lot of other aspects have been brought into the recruitment, the selection process. Um, I'm told in the last few years we have had a paper on ethics. Now, if somebody has realized that there is a need for a paper on ethics, you can understand what is the general signal most of the bureaucrats are giving.
Mhm.
So if but then again, remember, ethics is only a paper which does not, it is not marked, it is not scored. You just have to say, I've answered a few set of questions, and you get a certain percentage, and that's the end of it. You're passed or failed, that's all. So that is one sort of approach they have done. It is good, it is a good beginning. But now, coming quickly to the other side, you asked about the private sector. The recruitment in the private sector is different. There are no rules of the government binding on social considerations and so on and so forth. We also have this, because the guy which the promoter or the group of the companies, the board of directors who are responsible to the stakeholders, and sometimes a whole lot of them are there, shareholders especially. The recruitment process is a little bit thorough. I'm not saying that there is no hanky-panky going on in the private sector. It does happen there too. But then, by and large, you get value for money when you recruit somebody. And there are good companies which do good background checks, and which is why the refined product from the market gets into private companies. Now, what is the reason for that? Private companies pay better. There was a feeling earlier that government pays peanuts, which is why they get very lousy officers, which is why they get tempted to earn otherwise. But I think now the government is paying fairly good. I don't think there have been any letdown in that. There are good rules, procedures, good increments, good recognition coming up in the government, but still they are not a match to the three or four big private companies. So recruitment is one level where I think we have to have a better selection, and government believes in maybe the type of selection which happens. You keep diluting because. I mean, the fact that anybody, even at the age of 35, can get into a service. I think 35 is past your prime. Sorry if I'm hurting some groups, but if that is the case, then 35 is hardly an age where you should start learning things and using your gray cells to rise up the ladder. So these are some things. Recruitment is one thing. The other major area, Dinakar, is difference is accountability. In the government, I believe there is slackness all over. You can push the file up or you can push the file down. That is typically the rule. If you are not confident in taking a decision. It's not that decisions are not being taken. There are some very bright, thankfully to a few of them. Not all of them get that courage at all times in their lives. They know if they take a decision, it is based on some reasoning which they have got out of experience and also expertise. Government, unfortunately, can build up experience for you, but to build up expertise, you have to do it yourself. It has to come from within. And in the private sector, they'll not spare you for it. If you are not good, they'll throw you out. They'll test you for 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, and that's the end of it. So I believe these two things are very important. One is that you recruit the right people. If you start recruiting the right people in any organization, then you get better leadership. And the other thing is, you also need to have good parameters for performance evaluation, the KPIs. Even today, I would say the KPIs which I encountered, assessed people on in the private sector are of a far different caliber and depth than what we do in the government.
Is it because the wisdom is not there, or is it because the willingness is not there?
Uh, I don't know what you would like to interpret by wisdom. See, wisdom is
Wisdom in the sense of knowledge, the know-how of making a more robust and a more objective KPI. That could be one challenge. The second could be that you don't want to do it, and for various reasons.
No, you don't want to do. Yeah, I think both are partly correct. One is that you, even if you have the knowledge that there are better KPIs you could lay down, you would not like to prescribe it, because at the end of the day, if you score somebody on assessing them and scoring them even one notch below, it does make a difference. Because everybody who meets a certain threshold performance level, in some organizations in the government, there is what is known as the point system. So if you have got so many points in so many years, you just get promoted. So whether you get now, for instance, suppose it's a 25, just for example, it's a 25 point scale for 5 years. And the threshold is if you get 18, you get promoted. That's all. That is the only thing people look forward to. So 18 to 25, whether a guy gets 25 or he gets 18, it's a promotion which he's very sure of. And people rarely get below 18 because they have to make out a case for it. So that is when it comes to KPIs and performance measurement. Whereas in the private sector, I have noticed a guy getting 18 and a guy getting 19, or a guy getting 25. The not only is the responsibility given to him increasing day by day, but also the role he gets, the compensation, the CTC or whatever you call it. All those things, it is linked to it. It's not a general scale. Government scales, one end to the other, they run throughout, and then at the end of it, you get promoted to the next grade. That's the end of it. But even in the government, they are also very upset that donkeys and horses run in the same race and both get promoted as long as they reach the line. So, but that is different. The private sector, at least the big companies I've seen, and it's very obvious that we need to somehow bring in a better level of compensation or recognition. And remember, government officers are not only looking for compensation increase, because this huge basket of perks which government officers get, which they don't get in the private
Private
sector.
sector, correct.
Yeah,
You can't
that
compare.
compensates for much more. So it is not as if that government guys are getting paid less or not this, because of the scale. It's just that, the recognition and the contribution they have made, that is brought onto a platform which is a little better than, and till today, I don't think there has been any rocking the seniority list except for in one or two cases. Seniority lists as fixed by the UPSC at the time of recruitment or after the training, promotions happen according to that. They will not rock that. Will not. Whereas in the private sector, I know. But interestingly, Dinakar, in the PSUs, and that's where I think there is a wire media between private sector and so good Maharatna companies have a system of accelerated promotion, which is following government scales, but because you're doing exceptionally well, you can jump a whole batch. Which is something nice when if it happens at the right time and people say uski kismat achhi hai, ho gaya 10 saal pehle agar ye hota to wo shayad usko nahi milta ye promotion. So these things are good, and they provide a good match between the private and the government sector. PSUs, central PSUs, Maharatna, and the BHEL, NTPC, BPCL, Steel Authority, they have a good system of accelerated promotions, but then they limit it to only once in a lifetime, once in a career. Once in a career. So some things have been taken up by the government, but only in the PSUs, but will not maybe take a long time for the others.
Yeah, so let me just summarize as a part summary of what we have discussed. One is you spoke about leaders with a clear purpose and commitment is the key to excellence. That is one which you mentioned. And these leaders putting in systems where, number one, recruitment is really based on meritocracy, and possibly also looks at the ethical and the value systems of the people who are being recruited, not just a number and forget it after that. That is the next one. Second, next you said leaders with a clear purpose need to put in some kind of a system where accountability is clear. It is not hazed and unclear, so that people can know that they'll be held accountable, and also the consequences after that. And the third is in terms of the performance management, where again you need to have metrics which are clear. And again, whether you are rewarding or whatever it is, it should be based on merit and not based on what should I say, an average number or whatever. So at this moment, I would like to throw open our discussion and ask anybody in the chat. Would you like to ask any question to Venkat? Please go on. Just raise your hand and then ask a question. Otherwise, you can also unmute your mic and ask the question. Any of the two. Yeah, so nobody wants to ask a question. Good. So we'll go on. I thought we will transition to, based on whatever you spoke till now, there is a core issue here which possibly one needs to understand. This conflict possibly is also in the private companies and with many managers, where I thought the core conflict is between inclusion and meritocracy. Because unless this core conflict between inclusion and meritocracy is resolved, driving excellence in a company will always be a challenge, isn't it, Venkat? And how do you go about addressing this topic?
See, as I said, unless you are aligned to the organization. Now, I join a company and I join a government department. People join government departments, you'll be surprised. They don't care why they're joining agricultural department or finance department or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about, civil servants who get posted in almost any and every field of work where the government is. So they don't get so attached, and they believe their competencies are so they're jacks of all trade, they can do everything. I think they do not want to achieve excellence very few of them actually get into specializing and paying attention to what they have to do, starting from, say, maybe running a district or running a railway or something like that. So if there is specialization at some point in time branching off into an area of speciality, the government would do well in not only enabling them to acquire specialization. Otherwise, at the end of the day, they'll become jacks of the trade. They're not they can't specialize in anything, which is why I think it is difficult for inclusion to happen in the government. Whereas in the private sector, it is it up to a certain level, it is clearly what shall I say, function specific. And later on, after a point in time when he has acquired enough what they call experience and expertise, then they put him onto a general management cadre where they become real leaders. So the grooming methodology, you must clearly be able to distinguish the wheat from the chaff, which is much clearer happening in the private sector, because they know unless you allow a person to show his or excel in a particular function, he will not be able to rise to higher levels, um, which is the essence of leadership. You have to take into account the concerns of all the role played by all functions, and that specialization will come up to a point, and thereafter you have to become generalist. In the government, everybody is a generalist. It's only if they have acquired a PhD in maybe go to Harvard and do a PhD in financial management. Yeah, it happens. It's 1 in 1,000 cases, 1 in 3,000 cases, and then they go on to become heads of the RBI or maybe some finance ministry or something. So I think the need for looking at function specific specialization and then graduating them to or elevating them to positions of general management, this structuring should be very clear in the future. Otherwise, you have a whole lot of mediocre people who are just there sitting, warming the seat, and after a point in time, at the end of the day, somebody has to look back. We are not sure whether he ran the commerce ministry well or he ran the social welfare department well. They're just generalists. They do a good job there, and that's the end of it. Uh, it doesn't happen so in the private sector, and to some extent, I would say even the public sector undertakings are guilty of this because they have a lot of baggage they bring from the government. But there, it is becoming more and more obvious that those from the operating fields, they are the guys who are to bring in the business, typically the business core business areas. Rarely does a finance man also rise to the top, though of course he is that comes on merit. So if you are to view at who should be heading organizations, who should be taking up leadership's roles, the identification based on their background, based on their experience, and not sheer number of years of service. That is what today, if somebody rises as chief secretary of the government or the chairman of the railway board, he's there only because he has age on his side and he has put in a large number of years. While at this, I would like to say that the Ministry of Railways has done something, because I know what is happening so closely in the Ministry of Railways. They have brought in a very good scheme that the top management will not be selected based on sheer number of years of service left or their seniority, so-called. They have started selecting from across disciplines, across functions, and at least 3 levels below normally who get appointed to the members of the board. So you can see they are looking at somebody with 7. Typically, people become members of the board with just 2 years of service left. Today, they're looking at 7 years of service, and it could be anybody. So tomorrow, it will take time, but tomorrow we could have a CEO of the railway board from maybe a department which was never in the running. And, you could have a signal engineer, you could have a mechanical engineer, it could be anybody. Even an accounts officer, finance officer could become the CEO of railways. So while emphasis is given to the operational side of it, one is that you're throwing open, you're bringing in merit-based selection, which is giving scope for those far below the line who could never hope to rise to the member level. And I think this is a good thing. And yeah, there will be heartburns because people believe that they join the service because they know that they will rise to the top in case they are young enough and they don't get into any problem. But then the time has come. The government has realized, like the private sector recognizes merit, they need to recognize merit also and give opportunity.
Yeah, Venkat, I took this wisdom from whatever you explained now. That is that the general managers with a thorough experience in one core functional area before good general management experience makes the leaders effective. That means there should be one core, and then after that, a general management experience is what I understood. That because we're talking about leaders, because that is the key, is what you said for the excellence, right?
Yeah,
Now, now let us parallel to the fact that look, leaders are required. Great leaders are required. If great leaders are required in large organizations, which is all about people, which is all about human resources. On the other hand, we have got models which are more rational, which are more objective, and try to put a system in place, whether it is EFQM, Malcolm Baldrige, Deming Price, whichever be the excellence model that we refer to. Then how do these two go together in terms of do you really
I
need
think,
a model?
I think you have taken the words out of my mouth. I think we had actually at some point spent enough time on leadership and people. But then, as we have noticed, great organizations believe in for sustainability. I mean, leaders come and go. You can't expect them to be there forever,
Yeah.
like all human beings. Um, Process management, people management, process management. Good leaders build teams, but without processes, the team may crumble or may not be well engaged, and there'll be always be conflicts because they're come from various backgrounds. So I think one thing which any organization should now, as has been prescribed by many organizations, is to see that the systems management, the process, is so clearly laid down. And it should not be a document only for decorating the tables of the leaders saying, no, I have this system, I have that system, I have a rule, I have a procedure, I have a manual, I have a standard operating procedure. To integrate a process into the people is what is essential. You have to integrate the process of the organization. And I believe processes, while you can build processes common across all sectors, each sector based on its own, each company based, each organization based on its own mission statement will have to build its system. Based on mission statements, which obviously would have evolved out of why you exist, what is the purpose. And leadership has to lay this down, not anybody else. So if the leader lays down that this is the purpose of our existence, and the way we achieve this is this, then you have to start putting the systems in place. And if the systems are not good enough to deliver, then sorry, you don't deserve to be there as a leader at all, because you are responsible for not only helping lay down systems, communicating it to the people, and measuring, see that implementing it and see that they're doing it. The implementation of the system again has to have metrics which you will evolve, and you will have to see that whether you're going the right direction or not. So systems is so integral to both these models which we have studied over the years. And a system-driven organization, a process-centric organization, is what which will succeed. And I will not mince words if I say that I had my training. I joined the railways, which till recently, I'm not saying it has changed, but till recently, it was a total system. The nature of the operations are such, Dinakar, that if you have to run a railway, whether it is a signal or a particular station functioning in the north of India or south of India or anywhere in India or anywhere in the world, it has to follow a system, operating procedure, which has to be understood by the least common intelligent fellow in each of these areas. So whether a station master is there at a station which sees one train up and down in a day, or even 100 trains up and down in a day, he has to follow the same system. So the railways, at least in operations, they've got excellent systems.
Mm.
Same thing when it comes to use of technology in so many other facets. I think slowly the railways are adopting it. Digitization is perhaps the best thing which has happened, and all organizations must look at digitization of their systems. And now the fad is, and I'm also doing a bit of work on that, is how do you start using artificial intelligence to improve your systems, to monitor your systems, to keep track, to see whether you're on the right track, and at least give sort of an advance warning that this is something which may disrupt the system. So I think this is going to be very exciting in future. Artificial intelligence, which has evolved, I think, ever since we saw computers in the last 30, 40 years, this seems to be the future. People are saying it's a monster. It will surely become one if you don't handle it properly. But systems-driven approach. Forget the old methodologies. Bring in the new, where the people are important, no doubt, but people have to lay down systems, follow them, and take the help of technology to start, excelling in their work. And very exciting, Dinakar. I'm sure you would have realized that the
Yeah,
AI.
absolutely. 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 Now that you speak of AI, let me directly come to the area which I believe AI could help a lot. See, one is you mentioned that the excellence models, in a way, would support creating sustainability by integrating systems and processes in people for measuring both during implementation and execution. That means you have something already implemented, it's being done. Now
Yeah.
then comes the next very kind of a $1 million question: how do you make sure that people follow the systems? That is the next important question, right? Where you also mentioned about artificial intelligence could be of some use. But before we go to artificial intelligence, can you just explain what were your secrets to make sure that so many people in the Indian railways across the country would follow the systems, that the trains don't keep colliding every day? How would you make
Yeah,
sure?
yeah, good question. Actually, when I used to go for station inspections, and typically at a station, you have about 4 or 5 functions at a supervisor level who are there at every station. Imagine all the 7, 8,000 stations in India have representatives from different departments at supervisory level and sometimes at the officer level there at every station,
Mhm,
and all of them should be on the same wavelength.
mm,
So, and I don't think we should take much of credit as Indians for it. The Britishers laid it down. Of course, we have improved it over a large extent. But then what they left behind is a legacy which is unbeatable. Uh, all these people, supervisors, a simple drill of, every day there is a drill. When they report for duty, all of them are told the latest rule which is happening when it comes to in the last 24 hours in their section there is been a problem or there is something. So they are told that this is, it's a regular updation.
uh,
They are sent, and nothing beats the training like in the railways at all levels. You have excellent training schools. It is mandatory that they must be updated. They should undergo refresher courses, and all of them are actually rostered uh, as part of the recruitment vacancy position. There is something called a training reserve.
mm,
Like you have a sick reserve, like people, you recruit more people in the vacancies based on the number of people who are likely to fall sick. You also have what is called a training reserve. So in many safety categories, because it's all affecting safety of train operations, people are sent on training regularly. They are also required to sign. They're all given nowadays. It's all now computerized, but all station masters get, all the 7,000 station masters get a copy of the same general rules of operation for every month.
mhm,
And if required, it is updated almost on a quarterly basis, on a fortnightly basis. So these things, and he is supposed to sign off. So when we ask the station master, which is the last operating instruction you have got, he has to say number 7, and he has to give a gist of it. It is like a viva there. Every time it's a viva
yeah.
because he has to know it. And that is as far as the stationary staff are concerned. You can imagine the drivers and the assistant drivers, the guards. Oh my God, they are absolutely up to date with what they know. If they have gone up in a particular section, in a particular route, they know exactly what are the issues. And AI is helping them, not AI exactly, because the driver modules are now, the cabs.
Technology is helping them possibly, right?
Technology is helping them so much. Yeah. So much of, so I think it's been a long journey. And if the railways are doing it, I'm sure many other organizations, manufacturing organizations or process industries are taking advantage of technology to keep these guys abreast and see that, they jolly well know the process. And if they don't know, there'll be a prompt and they'll be caught. You have to accept, you have to say, yes, I have understood. And Big Brother is watching.
And do you also do an audit after that? Let us say you did the daily drill. What about audit?
Yeah, audit is a function which is now inbuilt into many of these computerized versions of the train locomotives. I know I can straight away recall. There is, just as you have black box in aeroplanes, in the aircraft, there is a highly computerized microprocessor based black box in every locomotive. And now, thanks to GPS and other things, there are three main places where the running of trains, running of locomotives, operations of locomotives, they are monitored across India. And at any point in time, there are about 11,000 train locomotives on the wheels. They know exactly which locomotive is having what problem, what it faced, at which bridge it faced a noise or it had to slow down or whatever it is. There's such a minute log which is analyzed back end by all these system guys.
No, I mean
Now,
that is as far as the monitoring of the railway train is concerned. But I'm talking about
coming to that. So
yeah.
based on this, they will try to find out whether it's a people error or it is a system error.
Okay.
That means infrastructure error. If the rail needs to be repaired, there'll be a signal to the civil engineering department. But if the driver has made a fault, it goes back immediately to his boss. There is, at every place, there is, for each division, there's a boss who controls the drivers, and they get information that, listen, at this point in time, you have not done a great job. You need to improve on this.
Okay. Oh, that means there is constant monitoring. You did the daily drill and then told the rules, and after that there is a almost real-time monitoring.
Exactly. And he has to explain his way out. He can't keep blaming the the tool, or he can't be blaming the track or some wheel problem or something. If it is there, it has to be rectified. But if it can be proved that he is responsible for it, like many times they are stopped en route for so many of these breath analyzer tests. They are asked for, and they work under such conditions. Sometimes it becomes difficult for them to take a nap, or that's why they have two drivers. They take the hours of employment regulations are unique to railways. You cannot put a person on duty for more than 6 hours, continuous hours. I mean, I thought this was itself bad enough, but the air traffic controllers. Do you know air traffic controllers are not expected to work for more than half an hour at a stretch?
Yeah, because of the concentration. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is air traffic control. And here it is, you're running a train. So there are different. So the employment conditions make it necessary for the human body to be relaxed and also, alert all the time. When you have the safety of thousands of people there in your hands. So we have a good system. The efficacy again of this is again a measurement issue. So how do we feedback? How do you take this into proper feedback, and how do you improve on the system?
Venkat, it has been very, very enriching. Let me just share my screen to show what I have summarized as the essence which I have gathered, and then we have a quick Q&A after that. I need to share my screen once again, and then I will show you the. Yeah. So can you see the screen now?
Yeah, I can see this. Yes.
So whatever that I understood and whatever that I could rephrase, I've tried to do that and put it in this slide. The first was excellence is all about significantly adding value to all stakeholders, where continually progressing is something which you mentioned. Then the focus on stakeholders are balanced in private companies and skewed in government organizations is what I understood.
Mm-hmm.
Then leaders with a clear purpose with commitment is the key for excellence. Here, 4 topics is what I listed out. Recruitment based on merit is the key for creating excellence in organizations. Making people accountable for decisions and actions with an effective and transparent performance management system is equally important.
Right.
Differentiating, rewarding, and recognizing based on performance, objectively measured, is the driver for excellence. General managers with a thorough experience is one core functional area. Before a good general management experience makes leaders effective.
Okay.
Then that is as far as the leaders are concerned. Then in terms of the excellence models, you said that they support creating sustainability by integrating systems and processes in people for measuring both during implementation and execution.
Okay.
Then lastly, everyday drill on the latest updated SOPs and rules to be followed with a close to real-time monitoring is a standard routine in large excellent organizations.
Yeah, I think you captured it more or less in what we discussed over the 1 year, 1 hour. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. Nice.
So I wanted to just now throw open for any comments and discussions. And before that, Venkat, if you look at it, all these things looks very simple, right? It's not very complicated, especially the last one where you mentioned that the rules are continuously discussed, and the SOPs are discussed, and then they are deployed, and then they're also being monitored. And there, I'm sure what you mentioned in terms of technology and AI can play a big role, a huge role.
I think you should add that in the last sentence. Bring in the use of technology and the impact of technology on this particular monitoring system.
Yeah. So I'll do that. In
Yeah.
the meantime, do anybody have any question? Please go on, or a comment. Anybody have any question? Please ask. There is nothing wrong. You can ask your question. Otherwise, there is nothing which inhibits you. Like with the aid of technology and AI. And this is going to be very, very thrilling, right? Where I said with technology and AI, if the last point which you mentioned, if that is going to come into picture, then it will be really thrilling, isn't it, Venkat?
Absolutely.
It will be very, very.
And what I've noticed during our discussion is that we have only touched one aspect of the entire excellence model, which is leadership. And if you go into the other customer focus strategy and all, the private and government sectors will have so much of difference, and which is also a reason for the differences in their performance. So it's so obvious. I mean, if the government is more customer focused, I don't know where governments can really, public sectors can go up to.
No, but what you said, see, if you look at it, our chat today talks about adding value. Then the core is leadership, and the core is getting great leaders. And the next one, which you said about processes, which is very important. And the last is to whatever you do, whether it is customer satisfaction, customer delight, people delight, or society active, whatever it is, that daily drive to talk about what is it that needs to be done, not only brings clarity to the people who are doing it, but also brings in accountability, which is again addressed in the leadership part of it.
Very true. Yeah.
So in the sense, you've basically rounded off the magic solution to any company for doing excellence. Now, for those of you on the call, if you feel it is not easy to ask a question, you can also type out, because some of them may have maybe a little kind of.
I'm sure they would keep in touch with on this chat box.
Yeah. No, it's not that they may be kind of inhibited also because of the, what do you call it as, the exuberance of Venkat.
No. No, it's a pleasure. It's been wonderful.
Good afternoon, Dinakar.
Yeah, go on, please go on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Venkateshwar. It was a really open discussion, and you shared many of your experience. of handling the large organization where it is very difficult because even on a lighter side, no, somebody used to tell in a train if the toilet is not clean, by the time you find out who is responsible for that, it would have been 15 days or 1 month. So, so managing a large organizations is has its own difficulties because of the sheer size.
Yeah,
It becomes very difficult, and aligning the larger group, it is again another big challenge. So
true.
in the manufacturing sector where multiple units are there, multiple heads are there, then there is at least some semblance. But with all that, whatever our Indian railways today doing, and whatever the on-time catch up, whatever they are doing now, and the technology adoption of the technology, railways is also in the forefront like any other
Very true.
banking sector or whatever. It is excellent, and it is because of certain people's wisdom and their sheer uh, um, efforts that things are happening. But to bring it to a larger section, definitely the models they help.
Balu,
It was very nice.
Balu, I think you didn't introduce yourself. Balu is the Chief Operating Officer of Triveni Turbines, Venkat.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
Triveni Turbines is a company which makes turbines for mainly
I
for
know.
sugar plants.
I know. Yeah,
And
in good old days, when I was in BHEL, Triveni was one of the major suppliers to. It was a BHEL generator with Triveni turbine.
Yeah. Always, even today, we buy generators from BHL.
Yeah, and I worked in the generator section, design section, designing the control panels and automatic voltage regulator system
Okay. From Hyderabad, sir?
from Hyderabad. Yes.
Hyderabad. Okay, nice. We also had one Mr. Ramasubramanian. He was also
Okay.
from BHL Hyderabad.
Okay.
So he was setting our technology for some time.
Balu, see, your challenger as Venkat has already given a solution. You need to put a daily drill on all the SOPs. Then all your whatever problems you mentioned, right? They all would come down to zero digitally. That's what I was telling the other day.
Yeah.
Very simple. Very simple. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for participation, and Venkat, special thanks to you for having shared
My pleasure.
great wisdom.
Yeah.
And look forward to having one more chat with you on the other areas, customer
Anytime. Sure.
and
Sure.
other areas. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Excellent.